Hi, welcome to Camp Kitchen, Camp Make a Dream with Chef Joe. Today we're going to do one of my favorite little things, and that's make some fresh pasta. And, pasta is just, it's like the Forrest Gump shrimp to an Italian. There's so many different things you can use it with and make with it. Lasagna, fettuccine, angel hair, ravioli. There are just tons of it. And so today, in soups, and don't forget your soups. But today what we're going to do is we're just going to make a simple, good pasta. It's an egg-based pasta with some semola flour. Rule of thumb when you're making pasta is 1 egg per 1 cup of flour. And then the other thing you want to keep in mind is how much do I need to make? So keep with the 1 egg and 1 cup of flour and add that to the amount of peoples. All right, so what we have here is 3 cups of semola flour, and you want to just use a nice clean flat surface. If you have a mixer, you can make this in the mixer with a bread hook. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to add our eggs to this, and there's 6 eggs here. And so you're just going to pour those in. You make a little volcano crater with your flour around it, and then just give the eggs a little bit of a poke. And so you're just going to kind of start mixing this stuff and getting it in there, and it'll about halfway through you want to just keep adding and mixing with your fork and pull it in. And don't worry if it starts running like a volcano does, because it'll all get mixed eventually. And then we're going to mix this up by hand also. And it'll get real sticky, but once you start kneading it and stuff, then you're going to be fine. And we'll let it rest a little bit after we do this. Pasta homemade is just one of those things where you can add whatever you like into it, into the flavor. You can cut fresh herbs and stuff. And today we're just making the basic simple pasta. The good thing about homemade fresh pasta is it cooks a lot quicker than the dried pasta. And we can dry this out. They have little pasta trees. Once you make it, you can hang it on there and stuff. And we're just going to keep going with this and getting it all nice and mixed in. Eggs is there's 2 tablespoons of olive oil and a tablespoon of water into that. And so we're just going to add that. The recipe that we have attached here is good, basic recipe. Stick with it, but the thing with pasta and flour is different kitchens have different environments in them. So your pasta may come out a little bit more dry or a little bit more moist. If you're using a pasta machine, that's going to tell you if you need to add a little bit more water or a little bit more flour. So you just kind of play that by ear, and you'll see as this gunky mess develops into something beautiful, we're going to be fine. And I'll get to the texture that we want. So at this point, we've got a little bit over half of the flour mixed in. So now we're just going to get our hands sticky. This is one of those things where I grew up Italian, and we're talking like 1965, 66. I don't want to date myself too bad, but I grew up in southeast Portland, and that was predominantly Italian neighborhood. And I had 3 aunts that all lived on the same block. So little Joey, being me, every week I had to go over there and mow their lawn. Now, back then, I got $3 a lawn, and that was big money for a kid. The problem is, all of my aunts, we would go in there, and there would be a pot of water simmering on the stove and a pot of sauce. I mean, this was virtually every day. And you never went over there without having to eat. So little Joey goes over, and I mow Aunt Marie's yard, and now I got to go over to Aunt Babe's, but first Aunt Marie has to feed me because I'm just a starving little kid that with a stick you could have rolled down the road like a beach ball actually. But so I have my pasta and I visit, and then I go over to Aunt Babe's and I get her yard mowed, and now I'm going over to Aunt Shorty's. But oh no, I have to sit down and have another plate, and this is a big plate of pasta. And so they're like, oh, little Joey, you're not eating. I said, well, I just ate over at Aunt Marie's. Why are you eating over there? You know I make better pasta. Now they're all sisters, they all have the same recipe, but being Italian, theirs is always the best. And so then I get to Aunt Shorty's, and I can barely get the yard mowed. I'm so bloated, but oh no, now I got to have more pasta with Aunt Shorty. And so that's the life of an Italian growing up. You're going to eat whether you want to or not. And you do learn to eat in moderation just because of that. And so trying to schedule all that, but it was a great way to grow up. And now you can see this dough is getting nice, and it's kneading. It's still a little bit tacky, so we'll just add just little bits at a time. And water's the same way. You're just going to splash it with your fingers and keep working it in until you get it to where you like. So, like I said, you can do this with a KitchenAid or something with a bread attachment, but this is always the best part about making pasta too, is you just got to get your hands into it and you get it sticky and you keep your surface floured. And I'll tell you another thing right now, as a little 6 to 15-year-old kid, this is why you never arm wrestled with your aunts, because they're working this stuff all the time. They had arms better than Popeye, and you know, they love you to death, but oh boy, they can get you when they want. So we've been kneading this now for 4 or 5 minutes, and time-wise, it's not a question of how long do I need to knead this. So what we're getting to here is it's not sticking to my fingers, it's not sticking to the mat, it's a little bit moist, but not tacky, and you can see how it's getting all of the flour and everything incorporated and mixed into it. So at this point, what we're going to do is you just want to wrap this in some plastic wrap and let it rest. And the reason you're letting it rest is just so that gluten has a chance to absorb into all the flour, and then when you start rolling it out or cutting it, it won't shrink up on you. So we'll do that, and then one of the things we'll talk about is today, when we make our pasta, we're going to do what's a garden salad. It's a very simple mixture, super easy to make. Your ingredients are whatever you have on hand. So that's just going to sit there and rest. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of stuff here. Okay, so breaking it down, it's very simple. We've got some butter and olive oil, and we're just going to saute that into a pan. And then we've got fresh basil, fresh oregano, and fresh rosemary. And this is why we call it a garden pasta. You can grow all this in a windowsill or on your patio or in your garden, or you just go buy it fresh at the market. So now I've got some mushrooms, a little green onion to top it, and some nice cherry tomatoes and a little onion, and some prosciutto ham. So we'll add our butter into the pan, we'll add our herbs, and we'll get all that mixed in that nice aromatic flavor. Then we'll saute our mushrooms until they're just soft, and then and the onions, and then we're going to cook our pasta. So once we cook the pasta, which we're going to do later on, we'll add that into the pan with some Asiago cheese. And that's kind of the secret to this, is that cheese starts blending in and binding all the herbs and everything, and you've got the butter and the olive oil absorbing into your fresh pasta, and then you can add prosciutto, which we're going to add today, or you can add shrimp or chicken, or just leave it vegetarian. It's a very quick, easy, simple meal. All right, so we've let our dough rest for a bit, and now we're getting ready to give it a cut. So we're just going to work a little bit of flour that we put down on it and get that. And you're not necessarily wanting to incorporate it in as much as you are. You just want to keep an eye on it so it doesn't start sticking to your equipment. So you're going to take your flour and you're just going to cut it into some segments that make it easier to work with. And we're going to show kind of both ways. If you have a pasta machine, that's fine, but if you don't, we're going to do it like my aunts did. And you know, whether it's saltwater taffy or pasta, everything at one time was all made by hand until somebody came along and said, hey, I think I got a machine that's going to help you do that. The one thing you want to do is while you're working with your pasta is the pieces that you're not working with keep wrapped up so they don't fully dry out. So the first one is just a simple pasta machine, and these go from $30 all the way up to $600, believe it or not, just depending on what you want to do and how you want to attach it. And on this one, we're going to set it to the widest setting, and we're just going to run our pasta through it real quick. And it's just going to come out. And then, as you can see, it's just got it nice and leveled out a little bit. And we're going to put just a dusting of flour on it, and then we're going to turn that setting down again. And you make this as thick or as thin as you want to make it. So, all right. So we've got it to our thickness or thinness, however you want to say it. And now we're just going to move it over to the other side. And this has two cutters on it. Some have three. Some you can form the shells, and you know, you want to make a cannoli, you're going to use this way. So we're going to do this. We're going to actually do a fettuccine. And as you do your pastas, once you get it through, or once you cut it to how you like it, you want to give it a nice dusting with the flour, just so you can keep it in there. And they make pasta trees, so you can bring this out of here and then you actually hang it on the little limbs off the tree to dry. But we're doing a fresh pasta, so what we're going to do here is as we make this, we're going to just give this a nice light dusting, and that way it's not going to stick and lump together. And this is a fettuccine, which goes really good. Different sauces do require different pastas, and so it just depends on which ones you want to make. And with this fresh pasta, it will last a couple of days in the refrigerator, or you can actually just dry this out and store it like you would normal pasta. But the whole purpose of this is you want fresh pasta. So, all right, so we've used our pasta machine, and like I said, if you don't have a machine, this is old school, but it's also a fun way. Another thing I want to mention with pasta is this is a great way to have the kids in the kitchen, because they get that ooey gooey fun stuff, and you know, they get to roll it out. And so you'll want to roll this as thin as you want. Again, this particular recipe this noodle does swell up a little bit when you're cooking it, so you're just going to roll it, and you're just going to keep adding some flour in that, and make sure that it doesn't stick to anything as you're rolling it. And you just kind of, when you're rolling it out, you're just kind of turning in the directions, and you'll get it the way you like it. And so once you get it to that thickness, and it doesn't have to be see-through, but you want it a little bit, as you can see with that. And there's different things you can use. You could use a pizza cutter to cut these out. If you've got a ravioli cutter, you can do that. We're just going to use a knife today. And like I said, it's always a good exercise when you're making pasta or bread, because you're getting your wrists, your shoulders, everything worked into it. And it's one of those things where it's just kind of a mindless thing, but you know how good it's going to taste when it's done. So, alright, so we've got that out, and it's pretty uniform in its thickness. So if you notice, I've got one of these baking mats. These things are awesome for making bread, doing your pastas and stuff on. Cookies, this can go right in the oven if you like. And so one of those things, what you don't want to do is cut on it. So you'll just ruin it. So we're going to take our pasta here, and we're just going to put a little flour so it doesn't stick. And then you can cut this in straight lines and stuff as it is, or like I like to do, I just kind of give it a little bit of a soft roll up. And we're going to put this on our cutting board. And then we're just going to trim it. So you cut it as thick or as thin as you want. We're doing a fettuccine, so that's why it's a little bit thicker than a regular spaghetti or an angel hair. If you're doing lasagna, you can just cut this into the strips for lasagna, and you do not have to boil this when you're making your lasagna. Just put your fresh pasta right in there with your layers. So rather than trying to keep a straight line as you're cutting a big layer, if you just simply roll it up a little bit, and then you just got the nice even uniform as you go. And then just like everything else, you just kind of stack it into the meal sizes that you want, or how many people you're going to eat or serve. And then you can store this in a Ziploc bag as long as it's floured. But what you do want to remember is this will draw moisture in the refrigerator or anything, so you really want to use it when you make it. If you wrap this up nice and tight, you can keep your dough for a couple of days in the refrigerator and use it. So if you're going to make extra, go ahead and keep it in the dough form until you're done. Alright, so we've got our pasta made, our water is getting ready to boil. Now we're just going to make our garden pasta sauce. So I've got about a half a cup of butter and probably about 3 tablespoons of olive oil in here. The sole purpose of the olive oil, not only besides giving it a nice flavor, is to keep the butter from burning. And so with that in there, we can control this butter a little bit better, and this is, some people call it a brown butter sauce, but that's basically what we're doing. So we've got that in there. Now we're going to put in our onions and garlic. And these are always the odors that made me mow the yard so fast. And then this is a fresh basil that we're putting in there. And with regards to the herbs and things that you're putting in, like I said, you can add or put in what you like. These are just This is fresh rosemary and fresh oregano. And that has always just been a trio of herbs that are my go-to, but I just love the way they combine in flavor. And we've often talked about smell-o-vision, and you know, somebody needs to really get on that and get that going. And then I'll be a gazillionaire. And you just got to let all this cook. We're going to just saute these onions until they just start getting a little clear and translucent. And then we're going to start adding our other, we are going to add our mushrooms into this. And like I said, you don't have to use what we have here. You can use all your stuff. In the summertime, we would go out and pick fresh zucchini and peppers and stuff right out of the garden. And this was the pasta we made in the summertime. It's great in the spring. Normally we'd go out and we'd pick fresh asparagus to put in here. So it's just whatever you like to eat. And so as this is going along here, we're just sauteing this, and it's just basically blending flavors and getting ready for our pasta. And our water is just now starting to boil. So when we cook this pasta, it cooks really fast. Fresh pasta cooks fast. 2 to 5 minutes at the tops. You want it al dente, so you're going to pull a piece out and just taste it. Give it a bite. You want that texture where it's not rubbery, it's not crunchy, it's just got that good bite to it. Then we'll put that right in here. On other pastas, if you're doing a red meat sauce or a cream sauce, Alfredo or anything like that, you're going to want to use some of that water that you cooked the pasta in, because that's got the starches and stuff in it, and it's going to help thicken your sauce. This particular sauce, we don't want to do that, and the reason is this is basically hot oil. It's the butter and olive oil in there. It'll splatter. But we're using the Asiago cheese, and that's what's going to be a thickener in our sauce and make that super, super good. And, some fresh cherry tomatoes. You want to put those tomatoes and the cheese in last. And the reason is you don't want to cook these to a mush. You just want them just warmed up and nice to where they're starting to pop. And then that just gives it a different layer of flavor as you're eating it. The prosciutto ham is going to give it a nice little saltiness and protein. And then what we'll do at the end is we'll put a little bit more cheese on it, a little green onion. And then another thing that we do a lot of Italians, we use eggs a lot. And hard-boiled eggs sliced and set on this pasta is a very good accompaniment too for another protein in this pasta. Alright, so we've got our water at a rolling boil, and now we're just going to add our pasta into this. And one of the things you do is you just want to spread it in there, but once you get your pasta in, you really want to mix it to keep it from clumping up and sticking. So we're just going to keep that in there. And like I said, it's just going to be cooked really quick, and it'll come back up on a boil in, you know, anywhere from 2 to, like I said, 5 minutes. You can already see that this is firming up, as well I can see. You're just going to have to trust me. Alright, so we're about 3 minutes into this, and you know, our noodles are nice. There's no solid texture or color. And it's perfect. It's right there where you want it. So now we're just going to add that right into our saute pan. And then we're going to add our tomatoes and our cheese. And then that will be ready to eat. Alright, so we've got our pasta in there, and we're just going to mix this in, and you can see how these noodles are just absorbing all of that butter and olive oil, and so we're going to throw some tomatoes in there. And I'm just going to start sprinkling cheese. And this is probably one of the best things is you simply just can't add enough cheese because it's just all good flavor. And this cheese will start melting, it'll start binding with the pasta and the vegetables that are in there. And this will just be so good. We've got our tomatoes in there and they're just getting nice and brisk. And we've been adding our cheese. We've got the prosciutto and ham. So just get this all on the plate here, and we've got all the beautiful colors and flavors. So we've got her plated. Our final touches is just a little hard-boiled egg, and that's certainly an option. It's just another added protein, and bon appetit. And that's what we're going to end up with.